When I leaped from the hospital roof, I crashed right in front of Lu Ryan. No tears, no screams. She just shielded Chu Mingyu, muttered unlucky, and walked away with him, leaving me cold on the pavement. I became a wandering ghost, trailing Lu Ryan for years. I watched them marry, have kids, and slowly tear their lives to pieces in endless fights. Yet she still spoiled him. Even when he started surrounding himself with my look, she would sit there all day watching her stand-ins play. 8 years after my death, Chu Mingyu showed his true colors and burned her alive in her villa. With her gone, he spent her millions on other women. I leaped onto her grave, laughing at her tombstone. See, Ryan, I told you he was a leech, but you wouldn't listen. Suddenly, my eyes snapped open. I stared at the digital clock. 3 a.m. My heart was pounding wildly, gasping for air. I realized I was alive. That nightmare was just a dream. I wiped the cold sweat from my forehead, cursing under my breath. Thank God I'm alive. I used to love her more than life itself. Just yesterday I threw a massive, dramatic tantrum to get my way. My 20th birthday's coming up, and Grandpa was supposed to announce our engagement. But he refused, warning me her family was rotten and she was surrounded by trashy men. But I was blinded back then, obsessed with marrying her. Remembering how she drove Grandpa to jump into the sea in that dream, I ran barefoot to his room. He was fast asleep. I tucked his fallen blanket back around him, kneeling there, my eyes welling up. Suddenly the old man snapped his eyes open, seeing my face. He shivered. Father, are you trying to summon ghosts at midnight? My nose stung, and I hugged his leg, sobbing. He sighed and patted my head. All right, stop crying. Tomorrow I'll swallow my pride and finalize your marriage with the light. A jolt ran through me, and I stopped crying. That was exactly how he gave in my dream. But later, she broke my legs on that rainy night. She ground her heel into my face, her eyes like daggers. Who do you think you are, touching me? I'll ruin your legs so you can never hurt him again. A chill shot down my spine. I stood up. Grandpa, I'm not marrying her. I just made a bet with Housie. I lied, swallowing hard. If I could win her over, he would owe me a rare. Grandpa froze, then burst into a booming laugh, slapping the back of my head. You risked your entire life over a stupid graphics card. I kept my head down. He laughed until tears came. Tomorrow I'll wire you $5 million. Buy whatever card you want. Really calling it off? I nodded. Why crawl back to her when I have cash? Letting out a sigh, I went back to my room and hugged my golden retriever. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. The screen read Zhao Mimi, biological mother who was kicked out for cheating. I answered, and her cold voice came through. Heard you are getting engaged to Lu Ryan. I sneered. You crawled out of your grave at midnight just to ask this. She paused. You are not a match. She only loves CH. I know, I replied coldly. If you get killed by her one day, I will buy firecrackers to celebrate at your grave. I hung up before she could speak. Lying on the carpet, I rubbed Jonchin's belly. No more playing the loyal dog buddy. We are going to live the good life and make it tonight. The next morning I put on sportswear and took Jonchin out. I booked every trainer at the gym. That dream felt too real. I had to get stronger. I used to be an idiot. When her favorite bluebells were torn up, I bought seedlings overnight and planted them right under her window to cheer her up. Now, they just make me sick. I walked over and grabbed them, ripping them out by the roots and tossing them into the trash. Dusting my hands, I looked up. On the second-floor balcony, Lu Ryan stood in a silk robe, holding a coffee. Her face was dark. That glare was exactly like the night she shattered my legs. I looked away, whistled, and drove my truck out. But there she was, in a custom suit, blocking the road. I honked. She did not budge. My temper flared. I rolled down the window looking for a payout. President Lu. She walked over, looking down at me. My car is in the shop. Take me to work. No, I replied. I will call you an Uber. No need, she said, getting in. She sat close, her perfume invading my nose. My stomach churned, remembering the torture from my dream. Gripping the wheel, veins popped on my hands. I ran a hand through my hair. Lu Ryan, I am in a rush. She stared. Her gaze was probing. Where you are going is none of my business. Just drive. Suddenly, Jonchin barked wildly from the back. Startled, she frowned. Throw that dog out or drop me at the subway. Without hesitation, I slammed the gas pedal down, and the truck roared forward. It was morning rush hour, but I drove like a maniac. I used to drive so carefully just to please her. Father, slow down. She clutched her seatbelt, her face pale. I glanced in the mirror. Get out if it is too fast. 5 minutes later, I slammed the brakes at the subway entrance. We are here. Get out. Liviji pushed open the door. Father, I do not like crazy men. None of my business. The second she shut the door, I floored it, leaving her in a cloud of exhaust. She stood there clutching her bag, eyes cold, as a Maybach pulled up and her assistant opened the door. President Lu, please. In her top-floor office. The secretary carefully placed a velvet box on her desk. These are the custom engagement rings you ordered 6 months ago. She opened it to find 2 unique diamond rings. She stared at them, but her mind was filled with my cold face from this morning. Annoyed, she watched her phone buzz. She picked up, softening her voice. "Hello, Ming. Ryan, I heard you are marrying Ji-Fada." On the other end, his voice carried a suppressed sob. She leaned back, pinching her brow. "Ryan, do not ruin your life over a tantrum. Ji-Fada does not deserve you." Chiu Mingyu grew desperate. Her eyes turned cold. "This is none of your business. He is obedient, making him the perfect partner." "Obedient?" He let out a sharp laugh. "Ryan, he played you. You think he loves you? You think he planted those bluebells for you?" Her hand holding a cigarette froze. "What do you mean?" He sneered. "I heard his best friend Housie bragging last night. He did not agree to the marriage for love. He did it to win a stupid graphics card." The lighter in her hand snapped, plastic digging into her palm and drawing blood. "What did you say?" "He is a liar. He is using you to win a card." She hung up, staring at the rings, her chest heaving. She had read countless people. How could she be wrong? When I looked at her, my eyes were always full of devotion. But now, my sudden change, the ripped flowers, my cold gaze, it all made sense. I did not love her. Or maybe I thought I already won, so I stopped pretending. "Very well," she sneered, eyes flashing. "Since you dared to use me for a bet, I will make you crawl back like a dog, begging on your knees. And then on our engagement day, I will crush you into the dirt." She grabbed her coat and stormed out. "Acquire all of Housie's gaming businesses. I want that brand gone by tomorrow." Meanwhile, at the underground gym, I threw a vicious hook, slamming my sparring partner against the ropes. He slid down, spitting blood, staring at me in terror. I wiped my sweat, eyes cold. "Too weak. Bring someone who can fight. If your boss cannot beat me, shut this place down." Shivering, he dialed a number. "Boss, someone is wrecking the place." "Yes, the G family's young master." A low, amused female voice came through. So he finally stopped being a loyal dog. "Lock the doors. I will handle him myself." Hearing that voice, my blood ran cold. I would never forget it. In my dream, she was the one who handed Liu Ryan the iron pipe that shattered my legs. I stared at the heavy doors as they pushed open. A woman in a black tank top and combat boots stepped in. Short hair, wolf-like eyes. She was the underground queen, and Liu Ryan's most brutal enforcer. In my dream, she laughed while my legs were broken. She had joked that my bones were soft, saying a few more hits would turn them to dust. I clenched my fists, knuckles popping. "Temper, young Master Ji Yecha said, entering the ring. Heard you think my guys are weak." I did not waste words, launching myself forward like a cannonball. No warning, just a lethal whip kick aimed right at her temple. Her eyes narrowed as she blocked, a heavy thud echoing through the entire gym. The impact forced her back half a step, leaving a red welt on her arm. "Interesting," she muttered, eyes flaring with excitement. "Looks like Liu Ryan was wrong. You are a mastiff, not a lap." "Shut up," I hissed, closing in. I unleashed knee strikes and hooks, every move aimed to kill. The phantom pain of my shattered legs screamed in my mind. I poured all my fear and hatred into my fists, as we traded brutal blows. 5 minutes later, I spat blood, gasping for air. But Yecha was worse off. I slammed her onto the canvas with a shoulder throw. I walked over and planted my foot on her chest. "Tell Liu Ryan to stay away. Next time, it is her legs that snap." She coughed up blood, laughing like a maniac. "Ji-Fada, you think you can escape?" She just ordered a complete shutdown of House's family business. You won the card, but lost your friend. My pupils shrank. That psycho Liu Ryan. I pulled my foot back, grabbed my coat, and bolted. As I burst out of the gym, a fleet of black Mercedes G-Wagons blocked the alley. The door opened, and she stepped out in high heels, flanked by guards. In an instant, they surrounded me. She stepped up, staring at the blood on my lip, reaching out to wipe it away. I flinched back in disgust. "Don't touch me." Liu Ryan's hand froze in midair, a dark flash crossing her eyes before she pulled back. She laughed coldly. "Jibada, you've got guts now, huh? Playing me over a stupid graphics card. So what if I did?" I looked her dead in the eye. "The wedding is off. The game is over. Leave Housie's family alone and come at me." Liu Ryan stepped closer, her nose almost touching mine. Her warm breath brushed against my face. Her voice turned venomous. "Who do you think you are? Once the game starts, only I get to call it off." She suddenly grabbed my collar, slamming me against the car door. 3 months. In 3 months, I will have you begging on your knees for me to marry you. If you don't believe me, just wait and see." Looking at her face so close to mine, I suddenly laughed. "Liu Ryan, are you insane?" I slapped her hand away and adjusted my collar. "Just looking at you makes me want to throw up. Beg you, in your dreams." With that, I shoved past the bodyguards. I walked away. Liu Ryan stood there watching my back, her nails digging deep into her palms. A bodyguard whispered, "President Liu, should we bring Master G back?" "No need," she snapped, getting into her car. "Cut off all funding to the GI family immediately." I want him crawling back to me tomorrow morning with absolutely nothing. Not even 10 minutes after leaving the alley, the phone in my pocket buzzed like crazy. Halsey's name flashed on the screen. The moment I answered, the sound of shattering glass and angry shouting blasted through the speaker. Beta, that crazy bitch Liu Ryan did it. Halsey's voice was incredibly raspy, dripping with exhaustion. I slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching loudly against the asphalt as I pulled my SUV over. Tell me exactly what happened. Half an hour ago, the Liu Group's legal team stormed into my family's company. They teamed up with some venture capital firms to force a hostile takeover. Our cash flow was already tight, and now it's completely dead. Halsey lit a cigarette, the click of his lighter echoing sharply over the line. And it's not just my family. Liu Ryan unilaterally cut off the funding for several major GA family projects. The banks are already demanding repayment. My chest felt incredibly heavy, like a waterlogged sponge. In my dreams, she had used this exact trick, her money to break everyone's spirit. She wanted us to crawl back to her feet. Halsey, I'm so sorry. I dragged you into this. I clenched my jaw. Bullshit. Halsey barked, his voice rattling my phone speaker. We grew up wearing the same diapers, and you're saying this crap to me. I've hated that Liu Ryan woman for ages. Does she really think having money means she owns Jinhai City? Shouting voices urged him to sign papers in the background. Halsey took a deep drag of his cigarette, his voice turning fierce. Beta, listen to me. Even if I have to sell everything, go bankrupt, and live under a bridge putting screen protectors on phones for a living, I will never let you bow your head to that psycho. If you crawl back to her, we're done. Before I could speak, he hung up. Listening to the dial tone, I slammed my fist against the steering wheel, making the horn blare. When I returned to the old G family mansion, the atmosphere in the courtyard was suffocating. My grandfather sat in the main hall, rolling 2 walnuts in his hand. Several branch managers stood nearby, sweating bullets. Elder Master G, the Liu family is trying to destroy us. Our cash flow is cut. When the market opens tomorrow, our stock will crash. Exactly. President Liu made it clear that if the young master just goes and apologizes, everything can be negotiated. I strode across the threshold. The managers fell silent immediately, their eyes darting away. Get out. All of you, my grandfather barked, without even looking up. Relieved, they scrambled out of the room. With only the 2 of us left, I walked over and fell to my knees on the cold stone floor. Grandpa, I messed up. My grandfather stopped rolling his walnuts. His clouded eyes stared at me for a long time. Then, he stood up, walked over, and kicked me in the shoulder. It wasn't hard, but I let myself fall back onto the floor. Useless boy. When you were making a fool of yourself over a woman, why didn't you think of our family's honor? He snorted, turned to a drawer, and threw a black card into my lap. The GI family hasn't fallen yet. I can handle this little storm. Take the money and fix Halsey's mess. A G-man never lets his brothers down. I clutched the warm black card. My eyes welled up. Grandpa, I will never bow my head to her. Then get moving. If the sky falls, I'll hold it up. The next morning at 10, the Liu Group headquarters was fully decorated like it was hosting a massive, grand celebration. Inside the first-floor media hall, cameras were packed tight. Every major outlet in Jinhai City was there. The massive screens scrolled with announcements about the Liu Group acquiring the esports sector. I stood outside in a black windbreaker, holding the leash of my golden retriever. As we stood on the steps outside, Junshin sensed my mood, growling low in his throat and glaring at the security guards. Young Master G, you can't go in. The bulky bodyguards in black suits blocked our path, their leader looking at me with a smirk. President Louis' orders. If you're here for the conference, you must read this apology letter at the entrance first. He handed over an A4 paper filled with humiliating words, rambling about how young and foolish I was to offend her, begging for her forgiveness. Looking at the paper, I sneered. Is this the best Liu Ryan can do? I let go of the leash. Janshin barked furiously and lunged straight at the security chief. The explosive power of a 100-pound golden retriever sent him stumbling backward in pure terror. He fell flat on his butt. Seizing the chaos, I kicked another bodyguard hard behind his knee. With a sharp scream, the man collapsed. Grabbing the leash, I stepped right over his shoulder and pushed through the revolving glass doors. Instantly, the media hall fell dead silent. Endless camera flashes blinded me. In the center of the hall, on a leather sofa, sat Liu Ryan in a tailored, wine-red designer suit. Her legs were crossed, holding a cup of black coffee as she looked down her nose at me. Chu Mingyu sat slightly behind her. His eyes were full of smug satisfaction and burning jealousy. Jibata, you actually dared to show up. Liu Ryan took a sip of her coffee and slammed the cup onto the table with a sharp clink, holding Janshin's leash. I walked up and stopped. I stood barely 3 meters away from her. Since President Liu put on such a grand show for me, it would be rude not to show up. I stared at her coldly. She stood up, her high heels clicking sharply against the marble floor as she walked over. Her eyes treated me like a dying bug. All G family projects have stopped, and Halsey's business is just an empty shell now. G Beta, this is what happens when you cross me. She leaned in, her voice dripping with arrogant, absolute control. She pointed a finger. Kneel right here on this red carpet. I apologize in front of all these reporters and beg me to marry you. Maybe then I'll spare your family and house Z around us. Camera flashes went wild. The reporters crowded forward like sharks smelling blood. Chu Mingyu sneered from behind her. Young Master G, swallowing your pride isn't that hard. Ryan has been generous. Don't push your luck. Looking at her beautiful yet heartless face, the memory of having my legs broken in my dream flashed back, sending a sharp pain through me. I suddenly burst into roaring laughter, the sound echoing through the massive hall. Everyone stared in absolute confusion. I cut my laugh short and glared at her. Lu Ryan, are you completely insane? Did you honestly think a little bit of money could buy my pride? I came here today to tell you one thing live to the whole world. I pointed straight at her face, enunciating every word. IG Beta would rather starve to death or jump off this building than marry a rotten woman like you. You make me sick. The crowd erupted. Shutter clicks sounded like a torrential downpour. Lu Ryan's face turned pale with rage, her eyes burning with pure fury. She was used to my absolute obedience, so this public humiliation was completely unacceptable to her. Good, very good, she hissed. Her chest heaved with anger. Since you want to ruin yourself, I'll help you. She waved her hand aggressively. If he doesn't kneel today, break his legs. Over a dozen guards carrying rubber batons rushed in from all directions. Zhanshin barked deafeningly, shielding me. I ripped off my jacket, wrapping it around my arm as I took a fighting stance. Just at that critical second, a deep earth-shaking roar echoed from above, growing louder until the entire building seemed to tremble. Outside the massive glass windows, a violent wind whipped up, bending trees and triggering car alarms across the plaza. Everyone turned in sheer terror. Hovering right outside the Liu Group Plaza was a massive, pitch-black private helicopter bearing a gold emblem of the Su family. The heavy downdraft from the blades knocked over billboards outside as the chopper touched down. Smoothly, the cabin door flew open, and two neat lines of elite bodyguards in black suits and sunglasses quickly jumped out, instantly securing the red carpet area. Compared to these pros, Lu Ryan's security detail looked like a bunch of helpless children, forced to back away instantly. Then, emerging from the helicopter, came a pair of high heels glittering with fine diamonds. Out stepped Su Ruoxu, the sole heir of the legendary Su family. She's the woman who reportedly controls over half the world's cash flow, someone whose single step makes the business world shake. She wore a sharp black trench coat over a dark red silk dress. Her wavy dark hair whipped wildly in the wind. Behind her large sunglasses, a stunningly beautiful face radiated an icy aura that warned everyone to stay away. The entire hall fell into a dead silence, save for the fading hum of the helicopter blades. Lu Ryan froze completely. She subconsciously took a step forward, her arrogance replaced by deep shock and fear. A president of her level wasn't even fit to carry Su Ruoxu's shoes. Su Ruoxu took off her sunglasses and tossed them to her assistant. She walked down the red carpet, entering the hall surrounded by her guard detail. The crowd split instantly to form a wide path, with nobody daring to block her. Su Ruoxu scanned the room, her eyes locking onto me with absolute precision. In that split second, I clearly saw a complex wave of emotions break through her cold gaze, a mix of ecstatic relief, as if finding a lost treasure, and deep, profound affection. She marched straight toward me before I could even process what was happening. A crisp scent of cedarwood washed over me. Su Ruoxu reached out and firmly wrapped her arm around mine. Her grip was dominant and commanding, yet I felt a slight tremble in her hand. Curiously, Zhanshin didn't bark at all, instead gently nuzzling against her calf. A collective gasp filled the room, and the camera flashes went absolutely berserk. Lu Ryan's eyes widened in sheer disbelief. She pointed at me, her voice trembling. Miss Su, what is the meaning of this? He's just to shut up, Su Ruoxu snapped, not even looking at her. She casually snapped her fingers. Instantly, her elite attorney stepped forward, pulled a thick stack of documents from his briefcase, and tossed them onto the table right in front of Lu Ryan. President Lu Yu, this is the acquisition contract, he announced coldly, adjusting his glasses. Just an hour ago, Poland Su Capital completed a hostile takeover of the Lu Group's entire esports empire. Even better, Miss Su just injected 10 billion in cash directly into my friend House's company. From now on, the Su family owns 51% of that company. Lu Ryan froze as if struck by lightning, frantically flipping through the documents on the desk. This can't be 10 billion in cash. How could you move that much money so fast? Her face was deadly pale. Her shaking hand knocked over a coffee cup, spilling black liquid all over her expensive custom suit. She looked completely pathetic. Chu Mingyu shrank into the corner of the sofa, terrified, as Su Ruoxu finally turned around. She gave Lu Ryan a freezing glare, as if looking at a pile of garbage. In our elite business circle, there is nothing the Su family cannot do, she said with absolute authority. Then, she turned to the cameras and pulled my arm close. She pulled me tighter and lifted her chin, every word hitting the room like a bomb. Listen up, everyone. G-Beta is my man. If he wants to play in esports, I will buy the whole industry for him. If he wants to protect his brother, I will back him with 10 billion. Suruox's sharp eyes pierced straight through Liu Ryan. Anyone who dares touch a hair on his head crosses the entire Su family. Liu Ryan, do you dare try me? It was a total power move. Her knees went weak, and she collapsed onto the sofa. She bit her lip. Her eyes filled with rage and terror. The wealth she was so proud of was nothing but scrap paper to Suru. I turned my head stiffly, staring at the woman next to me. I had absolutely no idea who she was, even searching through my memories. I was positive I had never crossed this powerful heiress. Yet, as she looked up at me, the icy stare she gave the media vanished. Her eyes shimmered with tears, filled with an haunting affection that felt like it had crossed lifetimes. She stood on her tiptoes, her warm breath brushing against my ear. "G-Bota, I finally found you," she whispered, her voice cracking. Before I could even ask, she shoved me into a helicopter. Over the next 2 weeks, the local business world experienced a massive shift. Suruoxu kept her wild promise. With 10 billion in cash backing us, House's company didn't just survive, it swallowed 3 of the top esports development teams on the market. Riding this momentum, I launched my own company, Daybreak Technology. Since I have a second chance at life, I refuse to be a pathetic simp anymore. It was time to become a predator. Using my connections and the Su family's backing, I targeted the Liu Group's core market. When she tried to steal my brother's supply chain, I paid double to buy out every single supplier. When she tried to stabilize her stock, I hired top traders to aggressively short her shares. In just 15 days, a third of her company's value vanished. I was relaxing in my new office, watching the stock charts, when Housey burst in and slammed a report onto my desk. He was grinning from ear to ear. "Beta, this is insane. Our new software just snatched 40% of her market share. That crazy woman threw a massive tantrum at an emergency board meeting last night, smashing cups everywhere. Their stock plummeted again this morning." I took a slow sip of my bitter black coffee, my eyes narrowing. This was just a warm-up. Once I choked off her cash flow, her little leech Chu Mingyu would lose his allowance. For a guy like him, having no money is worse than death. Sure enough, he panicked. That afternoon, a golden-embossed invitation arrived at our front desk for an elite charity gala. Right after, my phone vibrated with an unknown number. I picked up, and Chu Mingyu's signature dramatic, whiny voice echoed in my ear. "Young Master G, did you get the invitation? Ryan has been so stressed lately, so I threw this party to help her unwind. Now that you're a big shot, surely you won't blow us off." I leaned back in my chair, tapping my desk. "Chu Mingyu, what kind of pathetic game are you playing now? You misunderstand, I just want to clear the air. After all, I'm still the one Ryan truly loves. Even if you bankrupt her company, you'll never win her heart." What an idiot. I hung up immediately. Just then, my office door swung open, and Suruoxu walked in. She was wearing a sharp, silver business suit, her long hair pinned up as she playfully tossed a small flash drive. "Was that I nodded. "It's a trap. The idiot probably wants to humiliate me in front of the entire high society's crowd. Why on earth wouldn't we go?" she sneered, tossing the drive onto my desk with a click. "I just had someone dig up some dirt on him. The shady things he's done behind her back are dirty enough to make an 80-episode reality show. Tonight, let's go watch the clown put on a show." Seeing the cold fire in her eyes, I realized that when she gets ruthless, nobody else stands a chance. At 8 p.m. we arrived at the luxury penthouse. The moment we stepped inside, the noisy room fell silent. Every eye in the room locked onto us. Suruoxu held my arm, radiating pure power like a queen inspecting a kingdom. Nearby, Liu Ryan was holding a champagne glass, her expression incredibly dark. She glared at us, her knuckles turning white from gripping her glass too tight. Chu Mingyu stood right beside her, a flash of malice crossing his face before he quickly put on a victimized look and whispered in her ear. Her expression grew even darker, looking like she was about to explode at any moment. I ignored them both, grabbed some wine, and headed out to the balcony for some fresh air. Just as I lit a cigarette, the glass door slid open behind me. "G-Bota, do you really think you've won?" Chu Mingyu sneered as he walked toward me. His innocent act was completely gone, replaced by pure, ugly jealousy. I blew a smoke ring and looked him up and down, bursting into laughter. "Did she cut off your credit cards? That suit is from last season. How are you even getting by these days? Can't afford to be a parasite anymore." That hit a nerve. His face twisted in rage as he lunged forward. "Don't get cocky. This is just a temporary setback. She will never look at you again. Even with Suruoxu backing you, you're still nothing to her. To her, you're still garbage who isn't even fit to clean my shoes." I flicked my cigarette ash, watching him put on his little clown show. In my dream, he had stood over me with that exact arrogant face, mocking my broken legs. Now, he was just desperate. He was using cheap insults to hide his panic. "Are you done? If you're done, get lost. You're ruining my view." Chu Mingyu flashed a creepy smile, glanced around to make sure we were alone, and reached into his jacket, My eyes narrowed, my muscles instantly tensing up. I thought he was pulling a weapon, but instead, he pulled out 2 tiny fast food ketchup packets. Before I could even react, he tore them open and smeared the red sauce all over his face. Then, he grabbed his own collar and ripped it open violently. Buttons flew everywhere. "Jabeda, what are you doing? Help!" he screamed, throwing himself backward. The balcony connected to a long spiral staircase, and he deliberately threw himself down the steps like a sack of garbage, rolling all the way to the bottom. He hit the bottom with a loud thud, rolling around on the carpet while clutching his head. Fake red blood seeped through his fingers, covering his face. The entire ballroom instantly erupted into absolute chaos as people started screaming in horror. The music stopped. Guests scrambled out of the way. Liu Ryan's hysterical shriek pierced the room. She shoved through the crowd, practically crawling to his side. "Mingyu, are you okay? Talk to me." Her hands shook so much she didn't even dare touch him. Staring at his bloody face, she was too terrified to touch him. He opened his eyes weakly, letting fake tears roll down. Pointing a trembling finger up at me on the balcony, he whimpered, "Ryan." I just wanted to ask him to stop, but he went crazy. He called me a worthless parasite and pushed me down the stairs. With a dramatic gasp, he went limp and faked passing out. Liu Ryan whipped her head up, her eyes bloodshot and filled with pure homicidal rage as she glared at me. She marched to the bottom of the stairs, pointing right at my face. "Jabeda, you absolute monster. Mingyu is fragile. How could you be so brutal? Just because you have the Su family's backing doesn't mean you can get away with murder in this city." I stood on the landing, looking down at the woman I once worshipped, feeling nothing but pure disgust. "Liu Ryan, did you leave your brain at home? Take a closer look at that blood and maybe smell it first. How dare you lie?" She screamed at the security guards. "Call the police. I want him thrown in prison forever. I want him to pay for this." The crowd started whispering, pointing fingers at me. I just scratched my ear, too amused to even bother explaining. Arguing with idiots is a waste of breath. Right then, the slow, rhythmic click of high heels echoed through the hall, instantly commanding the room. Suruaksu stepped into the center of the crowd, elegantly holding a glass of red wine. She didn't even glance at the clown on the floor. Instead, she locked onto Liu Ryan's furious glare. "Well, aren't we feeling powerful today? Threatening to lock up my man?" She chuckled, gently swirling her glass. The deep red liquid caught the crystal chandeliers, throwing off a cold, sharp gleam. She raised an eyebrow at the crowd. "Since everyone is watching, let's make sure we all see exactly what happened." She handed her glass to her assistant and pulled a sleek black device from her purse, her fingers flying across the screen. With a few quick taps, the massive display screen on the main stage flickered. The charity promo vanished, replaced by 4 high-definition security camera angles. As it turned out, this hotel's entire security system was built on Su family technology. Suruaksu looked up, giving Liu Ryan a fiercely mocking smile. "Let's watch a movie, shall we?" She pressed play. The footage was unbelievably sharp, and the audio was crystal clear. On the screen I was standing on the balcony. I was just smoking when Chiu Mingyu walked up to provoke me. Then, he looked around, pulled out a packet of ketchup. The camera even zoomed in on it and spit it all over his face before ripping his own buttons off. He screamed dramatically and threw himself backward. The execution was flawless. The video paused right on his stupid face covered in ketchup. The entire room went dead silent. 3 seconds later, someone in the back burst out laughing. The snort triggered a massive wave of roaring laughter. "Oh my god, ketchup, give this guy an Oscar." Ripping his own shirt and rolling down the stairs. "This is legendary insurance fraud. Why is she dating such a ridiculous clown?" The mocking laughter hit her like a wave. She stood frozen, her rage instantly turning into total embarrassment. On the floor, Chiu Mingyu snapped his eyes open. Looking up at the screen, looping his pathetic act, his face instantly drained of all color. Chiu Mingyu scrambled on all fours, trying to stand. "No, it's not like that, Ryan. Let me explain. This footage is fake, they forged it." He babbled wildly, grabbing at Liu Ryan's skirt. She instinctively stepped back, avoiding his hand, and stared down. She stared at the sour-smelling blood on the floor, her stomach churning. I walked down the stairs, stopping right in front of Chiu Mingyu. If the cameras lied, how about this? I raised my hand and slammed a thick file folder right into his face. The folder burst open. Hundreds of photos, printed bank statements, and explicit text screenshots scattered like snoo, fluttering down around Liu Ryan's feet. I pointed at the papers, my voice cold as ice. "Chiu Mingyu, you took the pocket money Ryan gave you and kept 5 side chicks at the same time. The Southern Villa, the Bay Yacht, all billed to the Liu Group's corporate account. You even sent the luxury bags you bought them straight to the headquarters." With every word I uttered, Chiu Mingyu shuddered violently. Liu Ryan stood completely frozen. She slowly looked down at a screenshot that had landed right by her feet. In the photo, Chiu Mingyu was hugging a scantily clad woman. The caption read, "Hey babe, that stupid woman Liu Ryan sent me money again. See you at the usual spot tonight." Next to it was a bank transfer of 5 million. The date matched the exact day Liu Ryan was begging everyone for help during her company's financial crisis. But that was not all. Surawaksu stepped up, standing shoulder to shoulder with me. She delivered the killing blow. President Liu, you probably don't know that 2 weeks ago, Chu Minggu lost 30 million at a Macau casino. He used your properties as collateral for a loan shark. If my math is right, the loan sharks will be hanging banners outside the Liu Group building tomorrow. Liu Ryan turned pale as a ghost. Her lips trembled violently, choking on her own breath, unable to speak. The love she once prided herself on, the man she'd protected at all costs, even offending the entire G family, was stripped completely bare. Ryan, don't listen to their lies. I was framed. I love you, Ryan. Chu Mingyu broke down completely, throwing himself at her feet and grabbing her legs, weeping and begging. Liu Ryan did not move. She stared blankly at the ironclad evidence on the floor. Those disgusting photos and bills were like daggers, shredding her years of faith to pieces. She slowly raised her head to look at Chu Mingyu, but in her eyes there was no tenderness left, only a chilling, terrifying shock and a rapidly spreading wave of suspicion. Looking at the man she had risked her life to protect, a horrifying thought suddenly flashed through her mind. If all of this was true, then why did Chu Mingyu stay by her side? What sick, calculated schemes lay behind his instigations against the G family and his complaints? Get lost. Liu Ryan suddenly kicked Chu Mingyu in the chest, her sharp high heel tearing right through his expensive custom shirt, leaving a bloody gash. She was shaking all over, leaving her limited edition handbag behind. She stumbled out of the banquet hall. I watched this coldly, swirled my wine glass, and drank it in one gulp. Suruaksu leaned in and whispered with a chuckle, "This show is just getting started." That night, in the VIP ward of Jinhai First Hospital, Liu Ryan ran a 40-degree fever, trapped in an endless nightmare. The dream was like a lingering torture. Raging flames engulfed the entire villa, the scorching heat blistering her skin. Chu Mingyu stood outside, tossing a solid gold lighter in his hand. His once gentle face was now twisted like a demon's. "Old woman, I've transferred all your money. Die in peace." He laughed maniacally, turning to grab a young girl before driving off in a sports car. A beam collapsed, trapping her in the fire. As smoke filled her lungs and she waited to die, the villa's iron gate was smashed open. I, covered in blood, dragged my broken leg, the one she had ordered broken, crawling toward her, through the sea of fire. My clothes were charred, my flesh torn, leaving a terrifying trail of blood. I used all my strength to prop up a burning wooden pillar, shielding her beneath me. "Ryan, don't be afraid. I'll get you out." "No," Liu Ryan screamed, bolting upright. Cold sweat soaked her silk pajamas. Her heart throbbed with a violent pain, as if squeezed by an invisible hand. She gasped for air, her mind filled with the image of me being burned to a crisp. That was no dream. The agonizing realism was clearly her past life. Shaken, she grabbed her phone and dialed a private investigator. Investigate him. Dig up everything on Chu Mingyu over the past few years, even if you have to dig up every inch. Find his accounts. 3 days later, a thick folder slammed onto a bedside table. The private investigator looked grave, keeping his voice incredibly low. President Chu Mingyu didn't just embezzle funds. He also bought a suburban villa and kept 7 or 8 young men inside. Liu Ryan's pupils contracted. She looked at the candid photos the detective handed over. The features, physiques, and even the speaking mannerisms of those men were all deliberately mimicking me. Chu Mingyu privately demanded they wear the exact same clothes as me, even down to the same hairstyle. Liu Ryan flipped through the photos, her fingers freezing. In one photo, Chu Mingyu was whipping a boy who looked just like me, his face filled with a sick, jealous pleasure. He was using this disgusting method to vent his hatred for me while satisfying his twisted ego. "There's more," the detective said, handing over a final encrypted report. "Last night, Chu Mingyu used your high clearance to transfer all of the Liu Group's core technology assets to shell companies in the Cayman Islands. The company's accounts are now left with nothing but bad debts about to explode." The documents slipped from her hands. Liu Ryan clutched her chest, letting out a painful wail. The past fire and this life's betrayal twisted into a blunt, rusty knife, sawing her soul apart. She had mistaken a vampire for true love, giving everything to feed a beast, while personally ordering my leg broken, the only man who had loved her with his life. "Beta, I'm so sorry." She curled up in bed, biting the blanket and weeping bitterly like a stray dog with a broken spine. Meanwhile, in the penthouse office of Daybreak Technology, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the brilliant night view of Suruaksu leaned back on the sofa, her fingers flying across her tablet. Chu Mingyu realized Liu Ryan is investigating him. He's preparing to run, but I've already used my connections to freeze his offshore accounts. I turned around, my eyes growing cold. A cornered dog will definitely bite back. The lesson of my broken leg and my past life is carved into my bones. I'll never fall into the same trap twice. He's already placed a 50 million bounty on the black market, Suruoksu said, walking over. A bloodthirsty excitement flashed in her eyes. The targets are us. Tonight at midnight at the suburban villa, he hired desperate thugs to do the job. I sneered, drawing a black military dagger from my waist and spinning it. Then we'll close the gates and unleash the dogs. Midnight, the wind howled around the suburban villa, shadows of trees swaying. 3 unlicensed vans pulled up silently outside the backyard wall. Over a dozen masked men carrying machetes and stun batons scaled the wall, heading straight for the main building. Move fast, the boss said. Break the guy's legs and kidnap the woman. The scarred leader lowered his voice and kicked open the bedroom door. The bed was empty. Looking for me, I sat in the shadows of the stairs, playing with a lighter. Ares lay at my feet, growling softly, his eyes locked onto the intruders. Deadly, the scarred leader froze, then raised his machete and roared, "Kill him!" Before the words even left his mouth, the villa's floodlights flashed on, blinding the assassins with piercing brightness. Dozens of fully armed bodyguards in black poured in from all directions, pointing their gun barrels directly at the thugs. Suruoksu, dressed in sleek black tactical gear, walked down from the second floor, holding a blood-grooved telescopic baton. "Just a bunch of sewer rats, and you dare touch my man." Suruoksu cracked her neck, waved her arm, and ordered, "Break them." In less than 3 minutes, it was over. Over a dozen assassins lay in pools of blood with broken limbs, wailing in pain. The air reeked of blood. I walked over to the scarred leader, stepped on his chest, and pressed my dagger against his throat. "Where is Seichumi?" The leader wet his pants, his voice trembling. "At the abandoned East Pier. He's taking a smuggling boat tonight." At 2 a.m., at the East Pier, the wind smelled heavily of salt. Seichumi paced anxiously on the jetty, clutching a black briefcase. Just as the distant engine of a speedboat started up, several bright searchlights ripped through the night, locking him in place. 5 police cars wailed as they roared in, completely surrounding the pier. Suruoksu and I stepped out of an SUV. Seichumingyu's legs buckled and he fell to his knees with a thud. The briefcase fell open, spilling stacks of cash and gold bars, suspected of embezzlement, grand fraud, and hiring a hit. I walked up to him, looking down at his pathetic, trembling figure on the sand. Seichumingyu, spend the rest of your life in prison." "No, you can't arrest me. I'm Lu Ryan's. You're framing me." Seichumingyu screamed like a madman, yelling and trying to crawl backward. 2 officers stepped forward, pinning his arms behind his back, and slammed cold handcuffs onto his wrists. "Stay down." An officer kicked his knees, forcing him up. Seichumingyu squealed like a pig as he was dragged into the police car, the wailing sirens completely shattering his dreams. 3 days later, under a torrential downpour, the news rolled out a headline: "Due to a dried-up cash flow and the loss of core assets, the Liu Group officially declared bankruptcy." The chairperson, Liu Ryan, had all her assets seized by the court. I sat on the leather sofa in my villa, Ares lying quietly by my slippers. Suruoksu walked over with 2 glasses of mulled wine, handing me one as she looked out the window. "She's here." Holding my glass, I walked to the window. Outside the black iron gate, Liu Ryan stood soaked to the bone, with no umbrella. Her custom suit, once a symbol of power, was covered in mud, her messy hair clinging to her pale face. The once arrogant or female CEO of Jinhai City looked like a beggar now. She gripped the iron gate and fell to her knees, facing the villa. Thud. She kowtowed heavily, her forehead hitting the waterlogged stone, splashing mud. "Bada, I was wrong. I beg you, please see me." The howling wind and rain couldn't drown out her desperate cries. Thud, another blood mixed with rain, streaming down her face. "I remember everything. The fire in our past life, you saved me. I was tricked by that beast. See, I was blind to hurt you. Forgive me. Let's start over. I'll do anything for you." I watched this coldly, finished my wine in one gulp, and grabbed a black umbrella from the entryway. Suruoksu followed close behind. She naturally wrapped her arm around mine. The heavy doors swung open. I raised my black umbrella, holding Suruoksu close to shield her from the storm as we walked to the iron gate. Hearing footsteps, Liu Ryan snapped her head up, staring at us, holding each other. Her eyes flashed with intense pain and jealousy. Crawling on all fours toward the gate, she desperately shoved her hands through the iron bars, trying to grab my hem. "Bada, you still care about me, right? You loved me so much. You planted a whole yard of bluebells for me. You would have died for me. You are just angry with me, right?" She sobbed, her face contorted as tears and mud smeared together in a pathetic mess. I stepped back to avoid her filthy mud-caked hands. Rain dripped from the black ribs of my umbrella. As I looked down at the woman in the dirt, the agonizing pain of my broken legs and the despair of being burned alive in my past life finally vanished, leaving only a cold, dead silence. Looking into her eyes, I repeated the exact words she had spat while grinding her heel into my broken leg back then. "Beta, who do you think you are? You are not even worthy of dirtying my eyes." Liu Ryan began to tremble violently, frozen as if struck by lightning. Her eyes went blank, her mouth agape as she struggled to make a sound. I turned, pulling Suruaksu close, and walked toward the warm, brightly lit doorway without looking back. With a loud bang, the heavy carved iron gate slammed shut, completely cutting off the torrential rain and Liu Ryan's desperate shrieks outside. I tossed my umbrella into the stand by the door and slipped off my damp coat. Suruaksu handed me a warm, dry towel and naturally reached up to wipe the rain from my temples. "It's all settled," I replied. "Just a lunatic. She is not worth our time." I took the towel to dry my hands. The searing pain of that past life fire and the humiliation of my broken leg vanished the moment. Watched Liu Ryan groveling in the mud and begging. I didn't even hate her anymore. She didn't even have the right to be hated by me now. My phone buzzed in my pocket and Housy's loud voice blasted through the receiver button. "Fantastic news. That bastard Xie Chumingyu's verdict is finally in. Embezzlement and massive fraud, plus attempted murder. With his multiple charges combined, he got life in prison. He will rot behind bars for the rest of his days." I walked to the bar and poured myself a glass of ice water. "So he is locked up. Are the guys inside taking good care of him?" "Do you even need to ask?" Housy sneered viciously. "Remember Broken Tooth Kui, the lone shark he crossed in That guy went down a few years ago and ended up in Chu Mingyu's block. On his very first night, Kui's men shoved his head into the toilet, forcing him to gulp down filthy water. Now he is forced to scrub the toilets in several cells every day. If he has a second to slow, he gets thrashed. I heard they broke 2 of his ribs yesterday. He just lay there, too terrified to even groan. It's a living hell." I downed my ice water. "Tell them to keep him alive. Death is far too easy for him." I hung up, and the living room fell quiet. Zhan Xin was curled up on the wool rug by the fireplace, snoring softly. The flickering orange flames drove away the late autumn chill. Suruaksu walked over carrying 2 mugs of warm milk and handed me one. Instead of sitting in her usual armchair, she snuggled up right next to me, curling her long legs and resting her chin on her knees. Staring at the dancing fire, her eyes suddenly grew deep. "Beta, have you always thought my appearance in your life was mysterious?" she asked softly, her voice incredibly gentle in the quiet room. I turned my head to look at her, the stunning face that was always so fiercely decisive before the media and her business rivals, now held a heartbreaking touch of fragility. "A little," I admitted honestly. "The elite heiress of the Su family, who could easily choose any top heir. Threw billions of dollars to crash the venue and back a rejected playboy like me. Anyone would think it was a dream." Suruaksu smiled softly. She put down her milk mug and slowly rolled up her silk sleeve. On the inside of her fair forearm, a hideous, dark red scar from an old burn stood out. My pupils contracted in shock. With the Su family's massive wealth and advanced medical care, how could she let a scar like that remain? "I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth," she said, gently tracing the scar with her fingertips. Her voice drifted, sounding as if it came from another lifetime. "In my past life, I was just a nameless girl." My entire body went completely rigid, and I stared directly into her eyes. "That winter in our past life, Jinhai City had a massive snowstorm. I was burning with a high fever, starving for 3 days, and huddled by a trash pile under a bridge, waiting to die." Her eyes welled with tears as she continued. "Everyone avoided me because I was filthy. But you," she stared at me, heavy tears splashing onto the back of her hand. "You were wearing a black trench coat and holding a black umbrella. You walked up, took off your cashmere coat to wrap around me, and then handed me a hot meal and a stack of cash. You patted my head and said, 'Kid, your life is your own. Don't give up. Live well.'" I froze on the spot, my mind racing as memories of my past life rushed back like a tidal wave. It really did happen. It was right after my first massive fight with Liu Ryan overseas. Devastated, I wandered the streets and saved a freezing little beggar. Afterward, I was too obsessed with Liu Ryan to remember it. "Then, the Su family found me," she said, and I clawed my way to the top, stepping on countless bones to head the Su family. Her voice trembled violently, and she grabbed my wrist, her nails almost digging into my flesh. "I brought the whole Su family back to find you and repay you, but all I saw was your charred corpse." She broke down completely, throwing herself into my arms and tightly squeezing my waist as she wept. Hysterically, I watched that idiot Liu Ryan ruin you. I watched you burn to ashes protecting her. I wanted to slaughter them all, but the heavens gave me another chance. I swore that in this life I would live only for you. Anyone who hurts you will die without a grave. My heart felt struck by a heavy sledgehammer. I looked down at this woman, who ruled the business world like a ruthless queen, now trembling in my arms like an insecure little girl. That tiny act of kindness in my past life had returned as an obsession that crossed death itself. I slowly wrapped my arms around her shoulders, pulling her tight against my chest, and rested my chin on her head, breathing in the cool, cedar fragrance of her hair. "Don't cry," I whispered softly. "The past debts are all settled. From now on, let me protect you." She looked up through her tears, her beautiful eyes burning with a heat that could melt glaciers' intensity. She leaned in, cradling my face in both her hands, and closed her eyes to kiss me. No hesitation, just pure possession and mutual passion. I took control, cupping the back of her head to deepen the kiss. Outside, the torrential rain continued to rage, but wildly, while the temperature inside soared. 6 months later, on a private island in the city, the high-profile union between the Ji and Elitsu families booked the entire resort. This global wedding of the century redefined luxury, completely shattering everyone's expectations. 12 heavy helicopters circled over the island, showering the sky with millions of imported Bulgarian red rose petals, burying the entire place in a romantic crimson rain. I stood there, dressed in a custom, handmade white Italian tuxedo on the petal-covered altar. Grandpa G sat in the front row, grinning from ear to ear, his usual hand walnuts replaced by a pair of rare, imperial green jade stones. Housie stood beside me in his best man suit, rubbing his hands in excitement as the wedding march began to play. Suruaksu wore a custom gown, hand-stitched with 9,999 South African diamonds, topped with her family's heirloom tiara. Holding her grandfather's arm, she walked toward me over the petals. The sea breeze lifted her veil, revealing a breathtakingly beautiful face filled with queenly pride and a tender warmth meant only for me. Her grandfather solemnly placed her hand in mine, gently patting the back of my hand. "Beta, she's got a stubborn streak. Please bear with her." I squeezed her hand, our fingers interlocking. "Don't worry, Grandpa. I'll protect her with my life." For the ring exchange, over 100 online platforms broadcasted live, with hundreds of millions of viewers flooding in and covering the screen with comments. But Suruaksu didn't slide the ring on yet. Instead, she turned and took the microphone from the bridesmaid, facing the crowd and the cameras. "Today is my wedding day, and by Sioux family tradition, the bride must bring her dowry." She snapped her fingers, and a massive holographic screen behind the altar instantly flashed. Life, displaying an asset transfer agreement certified by a top-tier global legal team. "I hereby announce that the Sioux Group's entire $100 billion fortune, patents, offshore trust funds, and global real estate will be transferred unconditionally to Mr. G. Bada as my dowry effective today." A dead silence fell over the crowd. Even the ocean waves seemed to pause. The next moment, the venue guests leaped to their feet in shock, their applause echoing like thunder, and the live-streamed chats crashed from the massive traffic spike. "Holy crap, $100 billion dowry. President Su is a boss. This is literally gifting a business empire. Young Master G must have saved the universe in his past life." Looking at her, I shook my head, helplessly smiling. "You gave me your entire net worth," I whispered. "Who supports the family now?" She wrapped her arms around my neck, grinning like a sly fox. "You're the richest man now, Boss G. Of course you support me." I grabbed her slender waist, pulling her close as a fleet of drones spelled out G Beta and Su Ruaksu across the night sky, exploding into a dazzling display of fireworks. Amidst the deafening cheers and a sea of flashing camera lights, I leaned down to deeply kiss my bride. The scene shifts to an abandoned waste treatment station in Jinhai City's old district. Torrential rain lashed to the muddy streets as a sickening, sour stench filled the air. Lu Ryan lay huddled in tattered rags next to a green dumpster. Her once gorgeous, well-kept hair was now matted like dry weeds, her face smeared with black mud and filth. Her designer suit had long since been reduced to rotted rags, barely covering her skeletal frame. "Get lost. This is mine." A raw, beast-like growl tore from her throat as she clutched half a moldy bun. Her other hand swung a broken wooden stick wildly, trying to fend off 3 snarling stray dogs. One dog lunged, sinking its teeth into her calf. She shrieked in pain, grabbing half a broken brick from the muddy ground and madly smashing it onto the dog's head. The stray whimpered and collapsing into the foul-smelling mud. She picked up the sandy, moldy bun with trembling hands, stuffing it into her mouth. The coarse bread scraped her throat, and as she ate, she gagged violently. Just then, a massive LED screen on the shopping mall across the street flashed to life. The blinding white light stung her eyes as she slowly looked up, finding the screen broadcasting our global wedding of the century amidst a rain of Bulgarian rose petals. In a sharp white tuxedo, I was lovingly kissing Suruaksu in her diamond-encrusted gown. Below, a scrolling red headline read, "Su family's $100 billion dowry. Young Master G and President Su happily wed." The steamed bun fell from Liu Ryan's mouth into the muddy water. He stared blankly at the screen, his pupils contracting in shock. That radiant man, showered in blessings by the entire world, was supposed to be his. Memories of his past life ripped through his brain like a meat grinder. The boy in the pouring rain who had planted an entire courtyard of blue maples for him. The man whose legs he personally shattered, yet who still grit his teeth and refused to beg for mercy. The fool who shielded him from a falling beam and the raging fire with his own charred flesh and blood. Liu Ryan dug his dirt-caked fingers into the cracks of the stone pavement, 7 of his fingernails ripped off, blood oozing out. He had personally destroyed the only man on earth who loved him more than life. For that blood-sucking parasite Xie Chu Mingyu, He ground a priceless gem into the mud, ending up bankrupt and homeless, reduced to a street beggar. Ha ha ha! Leo Ryan suddenly threw his head back, letting out a horrific, disparate laugh that echoed over the empty garbage dump, more chilling than a ghost wail. Suddenly he scrambled up from the muddy water, stumbling and staggering as he charged toward the giant screen. That is mine. He is my man. Give him back to me. He waved his hands frantically, trying to grasp the unreachable figure on the screen. Suddenly his foot slipped and he plunged face first into the filthy, stinking ditch right beside him. The foul-smelling sewage instantly flooded his mouth and nose. He did not struggle, lying at the bottom of the ditch like a lump of mud. He clutched his head tightly, letting out bursts of hysterical laughter in the pouring rain. The rain washed the dirt from his skin, but it could never wash away the regret and madness in his bones. That is the end of the story. Please like and follow for more novel and comic updates.